I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about the functional approach to unexplained infertility. And this is definitely a very frustrating and heartbreaking diagnosis as you're not really sure what you should do. So you may be trying a whole bunch of things and not seeing any success. And you may feel that IVF or an IUI is your only option. With a functional approach, we talk about healing opportunities that are missed. And with a functional approach, unexplained infertility is never unexplained. So excited for you to listen to this episode. Definitely listen to this episode with your partner. Unexplained Infertility is looking at both of you together. Take care. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. Hey there. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery call is for action takers. And really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, FabFertile.com and click on book a free call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's Fab Fertile, FabFertile.com and click on book a free call. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our Fab Fertile Couples Coaching Program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is the exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. So I got to say I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. I'm Sarah Clark, the founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Brandy Buskow back to the podcast, and we're digging into the functional approach for unexplained infertility. This episode is for you if you have been diagnosed with unexplained infertility, you're confused about what to do next, all your tests are normal, so you don't really see a clear path forward, and IUI or IVF seems like your next logical step. So definitely check out episode number 6 for a functional medicine 101 talk. Plus, I'll look at some of the tools we use to help couples conceive. So Brandy is part of my team here at Fab Fertile, and she's an integral part of our couples coaching program, which uses functional lab testing, diet, and lifestyle changes to dramatically improve conception. So if you are struggling with infertility, your body is desperately trying to tell you something. Focusing on your health will either help you get pregnant naturally, or if you do need to go to the fertility clinic, it will improve your chances of success. So Brandy is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, certified transformational health coach, and EFT practitioner, so emotional freedom technique practitioner tapping. She loves supporting women so they can learn how functional medicine addresses the underlying cause of disease or illness. And thanks so much for listening. I'm really thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Okay. So before we get into this, just wanted to let everyone know that, of course, we are not doctors. Please refer to the disclaimer at the end of the show. Be sure to consult with your physician before making any of these changes. And our goal is always to educate you so you can be empowered to know that there are many changes that can help you get pregnant naturally, improve your chances with IVF. So today we're talking about explaining unexplained infertility. And some of the stats here, just talk about those a little bit. So unexplained infertility happens in about 10 to 15% of cases of infertility. I have seen it higher, but that's kind of an average stat. And it's a super frustrating diagnosis because we'll talk about this in a minute. With the conventional approach, it really offers very few solutions. So essentially with unexplained, they're going to look at your egg supply. They'll check your fallopian tubes, your ovaries, sperm analysis, and then everything's normal. And then that's when wait a minute, what do I do next? So for the conventional approach, there's a few solutions that it's offering, really talking about weight loss, getting your BMI in a normal range. So weight loss. Some of these are basics, which I think everyone that is trying to conceive should not be doing. So quitting smoking. We all know that smoking is not a good idea. Avoiding alcohol. That one, I've done some episodes on this before. I think we all know that drinking alcohol is not the best for our health. So eliminating that is always a good thing. It's not about totally going crazy on it, but like if you're at an event or you have to go out, if you can, do organic wine or spritzer, but and a cleaner alcohol, isn't that like tequila or potato vodka, Brandy?
Yeah, you definitely want to stick with the grain-free ones, the ones that aren't made with grain. So tequila comes from the agave plant. And then there are some vodkas that made from potatoes. So those would be cleaner ones. And you do want to be careful with wines because some wines are stored in barrels that actually have gluten exposure on them. So I would just look for the cleanest organic wines that you can if you are going to go in that direction. And a dry wine is definitely going to be better because it's lower in sugars.
Yeah, I know in the States you can get, there's dry farm wines as a subscription service. I've tried to get it, but I can't get it in Canada. Not that on a fertility podcast, I want to encourage you getting a subscription for alcohol, but yeah, you want to get organic. wines. And sometimes people, like I used to get with wine, I used to get like flushed and things like that. So having a histamine reaction, which can be common as well. But definitely those, so avoiding alcohol, cutting back on caffeine, that's a standard recommendation. And obviously the big one, reducing stress. So of course we'd all reduce stress if we could. Even going through infertility is stressful. Those are some basic conventional approach recommendations. And then they're going to try to tell you to try on your own for another, I guess, for 6 months. And then basically the recommendations are doing Clomid along with an IUI and then IVF treatment. Rarely they're going to say to use a donor egg or a surrogate. But that's kind of the conventional approach for unexplained infertility, and can be really frustrating as you try to navigate this and maybe trying a whole bunch of stuff and not really knowing kind of what a targeted approach would look like. So in the functional approach, we're going to be looking at the whole body, including the partner. And so looking at a detailed health history. This is something we do for all the couples that we work with. Doesn't matter the diagnosis, but looking at the whole body, especially for unexplained and really for any diagnosis, including the partner. I think a lot of times we get focused on the female and forget the male. Did you want to say anything in there, Brandy?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing when you think about, alternative medicine or a functional approach is the question is always, why is this diagnosis here? So rather than having the diagnosis, looking at the paper or the test result and seeing, what the numbers are and what can we do to fix the numbers, we are asking the question, well, why is this going on? And so that's why we take a whole body approach, and we kind of put our detective hats on and we start to look for clues as to, what are some underlying things that are going on that have contributed to this diagnosis. And like Sarah said, it's not just one person. It takes two of you to make a baby. So both people need to be involved. And we have found when we were just working with women that we would only get them so far and they still weren't able to get pregnant. And we discovered that when we started looking at their partners, there were some issues on that end as well, not just related to sperm issues, but just their overall health that can really help.
Absolutely. Even if he's putting his hand up saying, my sperm is fine, there's always healing opportunities as we dig into and looking at blood chemistry, again, not to diagnose, but to educate. And another thing is to look at when you're dealing with a diagnosis, and we myopically focus on that diagnosis when we receive it and not realizing other things are going on in the body. And I had this too. If you've heard my story I had yeast infections, and years later I also had chronic sinus infections, chronic bladder, yeast infections, toenail infections, dandruff, seasonal allergies, all of these other things going on. I had colds, flus, my immune system was very low. So for you may have these common symptoms, but they're not normal. And it's really to dig into, like if you've got mood issues going on, like I was just a super irritable pain in the ass, like irritability, which I can still be irritable, but not as much as I was until I changed my diet and addressed the chronic stress and the gut infections. But looking at mood, looking at if you have ADD or if you have anxiety, depression, that can be related to things going on in the gut and food sensitivities. Also, joint issues. You've got painful joints. We were doing a food sensitivity review the other day with a client, and Brandy was talking about lectins. Can you talk about that one a little bit? Sort of with the joint. Sometimes we get joint pain because it's actually I can never pronounce that word, lectin, lectin.
Yeah, so we'll just kind of do like a high level overview, but most species of things, so whether it's animals, humans, plants, they all need to have some sort of mechanism to protect themselves from predators. And so because plants aren't moving things that have claws and teeth and things like that, they can't use those to protect themselves. So what some plants do, most plants have a chemical called lectins. And what the lectins do is a lectin is a protective mechanism that will protect their young and their seeds. So it's basically their seeds so that they can reproduce from predators, things like bugs and pesticides and things like that. And a lot of times the lectins are found in the skins of the foods that we're eating. So the things like the most common one is potatoes, bell peppers. The skins have lectins, and some people are actually really reactive to those lectins. And one of the most common things that side effects that you can see when you are sensitive to lectins is actually body pain. If you've ever done an elimination diet and you've taken some things out like potatoes, and then you bring them back in and you start to notice, hey, I'm like really starting to feel achy for some reason. It's not necessarily the flesh of the potato, but it's actually the peel that has the lectins in it that you could be reacting to. And that's why a lot of foods that have high amounts of lectins are removed if you're following an autoimmune paleo or autoimmune protocol type diet, because it's removing that inflammatory piece. So things like potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, things like that, those have higher levels of lectin that can cause some inflammatory responses from your immune system.
Absolutely. And then typically we're thinking of food sensitivity with digestion issues. But as I say, it could be mood, joint, skin. But digestion definitely is a clue. If you're constantly bloated, I remember being like bloated for years. Like I looked like I was 3 months pregnant. It was ridiculous. Obviously I wasn't. And so like that bloating, that gas, the constipation, diarrhea, IBS symptoms. So those digestive, like burping, all those digestive symptoms can be a clue. So it's common, but not normal. And then also autoimmune. We see a lot of people coming in telling us, oh, I have this diagnosis. And oh, by the way, I also have an autoimmune disease. So it's not, oh, by the way, that is a huge healing opportunity that's been missed. And typically in the conventional side of things, it's using medication to manage an autoimmune disease. And the functional approach is digging deeper to be able to address these healing opportunities. And then skin is something I had too, where I had great skin in my teens, and then in my early 20s, started getting acne, cystic acne later, and skin rashes, and I had dermatitis and eczema and all these, and even I had to take some antibiotics for something going on last December, and literally it just destroyed my gut health. And the next thing you know, I had this freaking little eczema rash on my arm again. And as I started to heal my gut with bone broth and collagen and working on stress, and it started to go away. But it's interesting that so the health of your skin is a direct reflection of the health of your gut. Anything you wanted to say on any of those, Brandy?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty good example of like a couple of different case studies in my house with my kids. Their reactions to foods that they're sensitive to are all different. So 2 of my kids actually physically, we can see it on them. They physically get the gluten rash that's almost like pussy, and then it gets dry and it gets itchy and it's really hard to go away, almost like an eczema. 2 of my other kids actually have behavioral changes. So you'll notice that they get more teary or they get more upset easily if they have foods. And then another big thing that I noticed looking back on pictures of my kids, and this is something for you guys to maybe think about too, is that I didn't notice it at the time, but when I look back on pictures now, they had really dark circles under their eyes. Almost like what you would call an allergy shiner. So it's not that they're allergic to the foods, but you could see that they were inflamed and they were having a reaction to something. And so that was at the time, one of the only manifestations was just these really dark circles under their eyes, looking like they hadn't slept. And I realize now that it was because it was from foods that we didn't know that they were sensitive to. So it's not just going to be, oh, I ate something and I've got a bunch of cramps and my stomach hurts and, I've got diarrhea or constipation or gas and bloating. It could be brain fog, like severe brain fog, like you feel like you have bricks in your head and you can't think straight. That is a pretty big clue. I get that from eggs. It could be headaches. It could be neurological things, like you feel like you're being clumsy, like you eat something and all of a sudden it's like, I can't pick up things properly. I'm constantly dropping it. It could be joint pain. It could be sleep disruptions. There's so many different symptoms that we kind of start to think are like they're common. Oh, everybody else has them, so it's common, but they're not normal. And that's definitely a symptom of something going on underneath. So if you are having this diagnosis of unexplained infertility, but you have these other types of symptoms like brain fog, headaches, migraines, gas and bloating, joint pain, mood issues, anxiety, there's something else going on that's a stressor that could be a clue as to, maybe that's contributing to that diagnosis of unexplained infertility.
Absolutely. If your body's under attack, it wants to survive, not procreate. And with the dark circles, I had those, I remember I was 12, looking in the mirror going, why do I have these dark circles? And the food sensitivities for me and for my son, for him, it's mood, and it's not weepy, it's pissy, angry. Anyways, that's how it shows up for him because he's very sensitive to gluten. And so basically when we start our program, we have both partners do the elimination diets. Definitely check out that episode, how and why to do an elimination diet. We take you through the exact steps of how to do that, because most people will come to us, they're like, hey, I'm eating a clean diet. As we dig in further, and they would say they wouldn't have a food sensitivity. I'd say the majority of people we work with actually do. And so it's not, you are some of your favorite foods potentially that you're going to need to take out for a period of time. Most of them you can bring back in. Obviously, if they're in a higher, we'll talk about this in a little bit with the food sensitivity. If they're in a higher sensitivity, we recommend not bringing them back in, but most of the time you can bring them back in. So yeah, we have people do the elimination diets. That's key. If you have unexplained infertility, both you and your partner start the elimination diet. This episode airs on a Monday. Pick this Friday. Go get the groceries on the weekend and start. So that's a huge thing we'd recommend to start doing. And then we have people do a food diary. So this is really key, and we have people do that actually before they start the elimination diet to really, and it's more to not count calories or anything like that. We're into counting chemicals, not calories. But it's more to see, how does food make your body feel, and physically and emotionally. And so Brandy reviews that. And what are some takeaways that we typically see, Brandy, on the food diary?
Yeah, so this is another good tool for you to use even on your own, because a lot of times people are eating and they're not really paying attention to how they feel from eating. So when you do a food journal, we have you kind of write down, no judgment, just whatever it is that you're eating. And then you ask yourself some questions after you eat. And some of those questions can really clue you in on whether or not that food is working for you. So for instance, if let's say you eat a breakfast and then you feel really hungry right away, or you are craving sweets, or you want to take a nap, that is a big clue that whatever it is you ate in that meal was not energizing you. When you eat, it should give you energy and make you feel good, and you shouldn't have cravings. And if you are having those things after you eat, then that can give you clues that that combination of food that you're eating is not working for you. Perhaps you're eating too many carbohydrates and not enough good fats and proteins, or maybe it's the other way around. Some people actually do need carbohydrates, and maybe you're eating too low carb. And so you're feeling very lethargic and you're just not feeling good. So it's a good way for you to really check in to see how the food you're eating is affecting you. And then you can kind of empower yourself and try to move things around, change your macros a little bit, try changing the food a little bit, and see how you feel. It's a really easy and free gauge and tool that you can use to check in with yourself. And it also teaches you to then start listening to your body, because we mindlessly do things and aren't paying attention. And by doing this exercise, you'll start to train your mind to say things like, I did this thing and now I'm feeling weird. I wonder why. And most of the time we don't do that. And it's a really good skill to start to pick up and listen to, because then you can start to see when something is off in your body and doesn't feel right.
Yeah, you can start to see the trends where you're like, why am I getting the headache all the time? Or why after do I eat, do I feel cranky? A lot of times we're seeing people aren't eating enough fat too, which are the building blocks for hormones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we commonly see not enough fats, and I also commonly see low cholesterol. And so cholesterol is very, very important, because you need cholesterol to make hormones. You need fats to make hormones, and they're also very important for, making cell membranes and keeping your cells healthy. And so, we all kind of are still in that stigma, I think, sometimes, of being afraid of eating fats. And if you're having issues with low hormones, I would definitely look at that. Make sure you're eating plenty of good, high quality fats, and that you're actually able to absorb them. So you definitely want to avoid inflammatory fats like canola oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil, a lot of those vegetable oils that are modified, and stick to more natural, stable oils like avocados, nuts and seeds, olive oil. Use cold. You wouldn't want to cook with it. Coconut oil, ghee, tallow, those sorts of things. Those are going to be good, healthy fats to help you build those hormones and keep those cell membranes nice and healthy, and avoid the inflammatory fats that are just cause a lot of issues and aren't really good for you.
And we have a podcast episode talking about healthy fats and why that matters for fertility. So we definitely go into way more detail on that episode. Definitely check it out. And so the next thing we do is we do the food sensitivity testing. And we will typically do, depending on where you are, it's either an IgG, so delayed food reactions. We'll do a LEAP MRT or a Zoomer. And the Zoomer is our favorite run right now. It's only available in most of the US, except for a couple states. But so what we're seeing, there's, and Brandy's celiac, so she's sort of an expert on gluten. And so really we are seeing a lot of, well, there's false negatives. People are doing celiac tests and only looks for 1 to 4 proteins in gluten. So we see a lot of people that have unexplained infertility or low MH or premature ovarian insufficiency or failure with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So this is typically missed. And if it's that high on a Zoomer, we just did one the other day where the gluten was off the chart, then we recommend the whole household going gluten-free. And even your partner coming in and giving you a kiss, or if he's touched bread and then coming to touch you, can set up a reaction in your body. So the food sensitivity testing really helps us to fine tune what we found in the elimination diet. Anything there, Brandy, you want to say?
Yeah. And again, it's a tool. I mean, there is no perfect food sensitivity test that's going to catch everything, but it is a good starting point. And it's a tool that can kind of give us some direction. I mean, the best test really is a complete elimination diet, but it's tedious, it's time consuming. A lot of people don't want to do that. So this is a good starting point and a good tool. We can start to see some clues from that food sensitivity test. Let's say, you run it and then all the foods that you eat on a regular basis seem to come up as if you're sensitive to them. Well, that's a pretty big clue to us that it's not the foods that are the problem, but there's something else going on that's stressing your body out and maybe causing some sort of leaky gut, which is allowing your immune system to then start to react to the most common foods, even if they're perfectly healthy. So it's also the way in which you look at the food sensitivity test that's important. You can't always just take it at face value.
Absolutely. And the next one we look at for unexplained infertility would be, and this is in our program as well, and our method is a sleep assessment. So I think a lot of people that we work with, I'd say the majority, there's something going on with their sleep. There is a small percentage where they're like, hey, my sleep is fine. And that was the case for me. My sleep has always been fine, but I have optimized it over the years. But we see people, they're having a hard time falling asleep. They're in the morning, they're tired and wired. They have insomnia. They can be snoring. So all of these, if you're, and another one, scrolling social media, having that in your room before bed and then up till 2 or 3 in the morning. So our thing is to be able to get you to sleep before 10:30. If you're currently at 1 o'clock, that's going to take a little bit of time to get back to 10:30. But really dialing in the sleep is key. Is key for sure. Brandy?
Yeah, I mean, it's really an important piece. I think I've told our clients several times, you can't ask me for a supplement to fix you if you aren't sleeping. So it is a cornerstone of health. If we don't sleep, that means that we're not giving our body's ability to decompress, to relax. There's a lot of things that actually also happen while you're sleeping. The brain detoxifies while you're sleeping. There's a lot of detoxification and regeneration that happens while you're sleeping. And if you're not sleeping, you're not giving your body that opportunity to do that. And that starts to create stress, almost like an oxidative stress, where you start to age faster because you're not getting enough sleep. And it also has a really big impact on your blood sugar. So, just a night or two of really short amount of sleep can make you insulin resistant the next day. And that's really what we don't want. So sleep is a cornerstone. It's really, really important. So if there's anything that you have going on where your sleep is not optimal, definitely something to look at. And there's a couple, a few reasons why your sleep could be off. And we definitely work a lot with clients on their sleep hygiene and what's going on and what could be triggering issues with their sleep. And Sarah, you mentioned snoring. I mean, that's a big one that most people don't even know about. And there could be so many different things that cause that. So it's really important to address it if you do have something like that going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We work for months on sleep. So if you've got unexplained infertility and something's up with your sleep or your partner's sleep, it is key to dig into that. And so the next one we do as part of that we look into is the blood chemistry review. Again, it's not to diagnose, it's to educate and really to have you know your numbers and really what they all mean. And when we do the testing and doing also the sleep assessment and the elimination diet, it starts to form, and looking at your health history, it starts to form this story, as we call it, being able to then know kind of what is happening in your body. So the blood chemistry review is key for this. And I'll just have Brandy kind of go through some of the things that we're typically seeing on that blood chem review.
Yeah. So again, like Sarah said, we're not looking to diagnose anything because neither of us are doctors, but it is a good tool because it can give us some clues into, maybe some things that are going on underneath the surface. When the numbers start to look off, the purpose isn't to what can we do to make the numbers look better on paper. The purpose is to look at it and say, why is it off? What could that be cluing us into? And so, for instance, we can see a lot of clues looking at blood chemistry that potentially there's something going on with digestion and that somebody may not be digesting and absorbing their nutrients adequately. So they could be low in B12, or they could be having a problem with iron or B vitamins or folate or vitamin C. That's something that we see pretty commonly. We also look at blood sugar. So sometimes, we might see somebody who has blood sugar that's off. And even though, let's say it's at 110 and your doctor thinks it's normal, well, that's starting to give you clues that, you're really having some blood sugar issues. I mean, ideally, you'd want to have a fasting blood sugar be below 90. And so if it's getting up there around 110, that's another clue. And there's lifestyle things that you can do to change that. The most common thing that we see is issues with thyroid. So again, we do not diagnose anything. So we can't look at your blood work and diagnose you with thyroid issues or thyroid disorder, but we can see clues that something is not right with your thyroid. And again, we ask why, because the thyroid is part of this system we call it's part of the endocrine system where all of the endocrine glands talk together. And so if one of them is off, it affects the rest of them. And so if your thyroid is off, then we need to ask, okay, well then what's going on with your adrenal glands? If your adrenal glands are off, then obviously there's going to be miscommunication with your ovaries and hormone production. So we can't just look at everything in isolation. We have to kind of look at it as a whole. And that's why we kind of take that step back and we ask the question why, and we say, okay, what can we do that we can teach you to empower yourself to change some things in your lifestyle to make improvements in those areas, not to diagnose anything or to give you a magic pill to fix it, but to do all of the lifestyle things that will make changes and shifts.
Yeah, so we're digging into, as Brandy was saying, looking at your glucose, looking at B12. We a lot of times we see that's high, which can then actually indicate that it's deficient. Cholesterol, looking at the full thyroid panel. We're regularly seeing some trends we see, like Brandy was saying, some low stomach acid, which can indicate infections or not digesting proteins. We see vitamin D that's low. For instance, the functional range is 60 to 80. We see it regularly in the single digits, teens, 20s, and 30s, and that can be an indicator of other infections, autoimmunity. Not just because you have low vitamin D does not mean you have an autoimmune disease, but something for us to dig into. And we definitely check out the podcast episode, the blood chemistry review. We go into this in detail, but definitely these are clues. We ask for the blood work from both you and your partner, especially for unexplained infertility. Like we've had people come in with unexplained infertility and they actually have Hashimoto's disease and it was not caught. So like it's not unexplained.
Yeah.
The next one we have is autoimmunity. And this, again, if we see a lot of people that are coming in with an autoimmune disease, either Hashimoto's is sort of the common one we see, or celiac. If you've got an autoimmune disease and they're saying it's unexplained infertility, like that is it's not unexplained. There's to talk about, when did the autoimmune disease start, and then using a functional approach to be able to, there's missed healing opportunities. Brandy can talk a little bit about this from her diagnosis with celiac disease, and definitely listen to her episode where she talks about she struggled with anxiety for years and then diagnosed with celiac. But we see this a lot with autoimmune, and I think that's a huge healing opportunity that's being missed.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think there's so many people that, maybe are having a lot of symptoms and potentially there is autoimmunity and it's taking them years to even get diagnosed. So again, it's one of those delicate balances. We can't diagnose you, but there are some clues that something is going on. I had issues with what was called IBS almost my entire life. And it wasn't until after I had my daughter, my third child, and I started really learning about functional nutrition and looking into testing that I actually really forced my doctor to do a celiac test. And the blood test came back negative, but I still did have a colonoscopy just because I had a history of polyps, which, was another big clue. And I was diagnosed that way. And, if I hadn't asked for that test, it wouldn't have gotten run. There's a lot of other things that just weird symptoms that also led me down the path of, potentially diagnosing Hashimoto's disease, having issues with breastfeeding and a lot of the anxiety that I had postpartum. I truly believe a lot of that was related to my thyroid. But again, if your doctors aren't running the right tests and asking questions and giving clues, then they're not going to catch it. And then the big question is, okay, well, I have an autoimmune disorder, then what? Well, again, the question is why? Why do you have it? It's not a pill is going to fix it. We have to ask why, and we need to change our lifestyle. I mean, like Sarah said, I did go a little bit into my history into that podcast, a lot of trauma and deaths in my family and a lot of different things that happened. And that definitely contributed, I think, to me developing autoimmunity. And it's incumbent on me not to rely on the medication, but to really get real with myself about self-care and taking care of myself and movement and sleeping and working on stress so that I can manage it and not just rely on a medication, which then will have side effects and it can continue down that path of just needing more medications just to feel okay.
Yeah, focusing on the basics, which we've got people like jumping through the Zoom call for the Zoom screen, demanding supplements, and that's like a Band-Aid approach as well. So it is looking at the whole body. Another test that we do is the Dutch test. That's looking at your hormones using urine over the course of a couple days, and really we see a number of people where their cortisol, like it's flatlined, it could be completely burnt out. Typically from stress or stress from the fertility journey. We see people supplementing with melatonin and their melatonin is high and then body's not able to produce its own melatonin. We look at the neurotransmitters in there, and sometimes the dopamine or the other neurotransmitters could be imbalanced. So those are some clues. Definitely check out Dutch Test 101. We go through a Dutch test and talk about kind of some of the clues that we see in there. But for sure, Unexplained Infertility, to look at the Dutch test and see, well, what are some healing opportunities? What is happening with your hormones? And typically, where we could self-prescribe or take maybe Vitex or some of these other supplements, and we don't really know what's happening with our hormones. So the Dutch test really helps us take a very targeted approach.
Yeah, again, we're always asking the question, why? So when we're looking at the Dutch test, if the hormones are off, we need to ask, why? Why is this happening? What is contributing to this? We have had some women that we work with where they truly did have premature ovarian failure, and there really wasn't, we did all of the things. They were very compliant. We did all the lifestyle things. That's just what happened. But a lot of other times there are women that come in and we start going through all of this testing and we start uncovering some hidden things going on that they didn't know about. And by making some lifestyle shifts and sleeping better and changing their food and maybe working on some stressors and stress, they were able to improve their hormones. So again, that test is giving us clues. It's not to diagnose anything. It's not to confirm your diagnosis. It's to let us know how your body is actually handling the stress that it's under. Is it able to handle it? And if it's not, then we need to keep digging and find out what the stressors are so that we can help you work on them.
And the next one we do is the GI map. So that's a stool test. It's at the DNA of your stool. And the majority of people that we work with, there's something going on in the gut, either a parasite, a bacterial infection. We see H. pylori being passed back and forth to partners, fungal overgrowth. And we see this with unexplained infertility as well. So again, if you've got a gut infection, that is a physical stressor in your body. And the body wants to survive, not procreate. So I don't think we've had one of these GI map tests come back clean, there's usually something going on.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I come back to it's also how you look at the test and interpret it. You can't just look at it and say, oh, there's all these things, I need to attack all these things. There are some trends that you can see that's giving you clues that it's like, oh, these things are elevated or these things are showing up. That's a big clue that there are some deficiencies, again, where you're not absorbing nutrients. So if you're not getting the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you need, you're not going to be able to feel 100% healthy. And the nice thing about that test is it does give us clues into digestion. It's telling us, are you able to absorb and utilize fat? How is your capacity to actually digest? There's a couple of clues, not many, but into detoxification. Is your liver sluggish? Do you have a toxic burden? Do we need to, support your liver a little bit and maybe talk about drinking clean water and looking at personal care products and some of the things that you're cooking and using in everyday life? So it is a good tool. It gives us a lot of clues and it has helped a lot of women. We found some things on there that they didn't know were there. And some of these women came to us with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, and we cleaned some of these things up and that even improved. Again, it's just clues and building a bigger picture and then working on those underlying stressors that maybe you didn't know were there when you first got diagnosed.
Absolutely. And then the next one is the hair tissue mineral analysis test, and that's looking at your minerals. And we see this a lot of times, especially if you've been on long-term hormonal birth control. So if you've been on the pill for a period of years, like that is a huge clue and a red flag to dig deeper if you have unexplained infertility, because you could be eating this beautiful, natural, nutrient-dense diet, but your body's not able to absorb it, the food. So that the pill predisposes you to that, also predisposes you to food sensitivities and gut infections. So, and a lot of times when we ask people, well, why did you go on the pill? And it's typically not for prevention, it's for irregular periods, heavy periods, light periods, PMS, acne. There's something typically going on with the cycle, and that's why they're put on it. And now coming off, they're dealing with infertility. And that was the case for me. My cycle went off and I had acne, and first thing to do is put on the pill. So I was on for years and then go off. And, I happen to get a diagnosis of POI or POF. Not to say that's, people go on the pill all the time and come off and have children. But, we're people that I'm speaking to, they come off and they're dealing with infertility. So that's a huge red flag to dig into as well. But the hair tissue mineral analysis test, we can make really targeted food recommendations and some supplement recommendations to help balance the minerals.
Yeah. So I want to touch on the comment you made on birth control. So if you had issues with your cycles before going on birth control, the birth control is not fixing it. It's just turning the signal off and shutting things down and just kind of masking it. That problem is still going to be there when you come off. So if you don't address the problem that was causing your cycles to be irregular in the first place, then you're going to have that same issue when you come off. And depending on how long you've been on birth control, like Sarah said, it has been shown if you've been on there for long periods of time, it depletes some of the really important nutrients that you need. So you almost, in a sense, have to play a little bit of catch up when you come off to replenish your body, get the nutrients in there that you need. And every person is different. It could take you, it could take some women up to a year to even feel normal again with cycles after coming off of the pill. So that's an important thing to keep in mind and to know. The longer you've been on it, the longer it may take for you to bounce back. And in terms of the hair tissue mineral analysis, I just love this test because it's easy, it's inexpensive, but it can really, really give us some big clues into some important minerals that are essential for so many different functions in the body. We see a lot of women who come back. I don't think we've ever seen anybody that's been high in the major minerals where their potassium, their sodium, their magnesium are all super low. And that's a really big indication into being really depleted. And so that again tells us you're in a depleted state. We really need to work on ramping up your nutrient sufficiency, nutrient dense foods, lots of really good quality foods, working on stress, working on sleep. So it's another good gauge and the easy test to do to give us some more clues and information.
Absolutely. And then we will always retest to make sure whatever we've found has been eradicated. And typically we're going to retest the stool and the hormone tests, so the Dutch and the GI map tests, and looking to see that infections are eradicated, the nutrient levels are restored, hormones are balanced. And we can talk a little bit about biofilms here, Brandy.
Yeah, so it's actually not uncommon for us to retest the stool test and actually find more things, because what we're doing is when we are looking at a stool test, let's say we do find something that we consider is a pathogen, so is a problem in the gut. There are a lot of bacteria in there that are healthy and that are normal, but there are some that are, we call them pathogenic, that aren't supposed to be there, or they're not supposed to overgrow and take over. So when we start to kind of work on it, we give you, some options on how to address it. You can work with your doctor, or we can give you some other recommendations. And so if you do the herbal or the botanical route, we generally add in something that we call a biofilm disruptor. So what that's doing is it's helping to break up the biofilm, which is essentially like a sticky substance or coating that pathogens use to protect themselves in the gut. And they also use it as a way to communicate with each other. And so if you don't remove those biofilms, you may not be able to get rid of all of the bad bacteria or parasites that are in there. And so a lot of times we will do, somebody will do a protocol, we'll retest the stool test, and we might find something else because that something else was there all along. It was just buried deep in there and it's been there for a while. And we couldn't see it because the biofilms weren't showing it. Again, it's not uncommon to find some more stuff, but that's a good sign. It means we're uncovering some clues and some stressors, and we can work on it. It's all good.
Absolutely. And so it's key to dig into those basics. So to get the diet that's right for you for unexplained infertility, to figure out sleep. If you or your partner, and the diet is for you and your partner, not just you cleaning up your diet and doing the elimination diet, he's doing it too. Sleep for both of you. We see this a lot with perhaps the male partners snoring, and to dig into optimizing sleep for both of you. The stress, we are coaching like type A busy professionals. The piece here is to dial back the work. If you're working more than 50 hours a week, where's the space in your day right now to bring in your baby? So really digging into the stress piece is key, and getting honest with yourself. Where can you lean into self-care? And this is easier said than done, but it is something to really be able to prioritize yourself, to be able to then take care of others. So the stress component is huge, and also movement. Type A typically is doing vigorous exercise. That's not recommended, but nor is hanging out on the couch. So really that moderate amount of exercise and making sure you move every day. So those basics are key. And we can address the gut infections and, look at, give you a supplement protocol. But if you haven't really nailed in those basics, those are huge healing opportunities that have been missed. Anything there, Brandy?
No, I mean, you really did explain it. It's a whole lifestyle approach. It's not, here's a pill to fix the problem. I mean, it does take work. And I think that's something we've said in some of other podcasts. If you are looking to take this approach and really make big changes, there is work involved, and it does take time. You do need to be patient, and we can't promise that you're going to get results right away. Every single person is different. And it really is dependent on, how committed you are to making the changes that we recommend, and being patient to be able to see those changes. So it definitely does work. If you are committed, you will see improvements in your health. 100% that I can tell you, you will see improvements if you put the work in, but it is work. It's not a magic pill.
Absolutely. We can't do it for you. Both Brandy and I have totally revamped our whole entire lifestyle. It's been a number of years, obviously, but in the beginning, I know when I first started doing this, I noticed huge change in a very short period of time. And then you just start seeing your pattern, start seeing all the stuff that we all do. And then that's why having someone guiding you along the way, we both made a lot of mistakes. So we help you fast track your success. So I just wanted to talk about a case study here with Unexplained Infertility. So we've got a couple that tried for 2.5 years. They had 2 failed IVFs. We did the elimination diet, so they both did that. Came back that the female partner had the elimination diet, had some digestive issues with dairy. And then we further dug into that with food sensitivity testing. At the time, we were doing the LEAP MRT, that's blood draw. And we found out some of the yellow foods, so foods you recommend for taking out for 30 to 60 days. So she was intolerant to eggs, soy, corn, and some food dyes, beef and zucchini. And then for her, like she found in the elimination diet, dairy was in the red. So keeping that up for 90 days or long term. The LEAP MRT is not the best test to figure out sensitivity to gluten. We can look at that in the stool test as well to see if there's any exposure to gluten. Did you want to talk a little bit about the food sensitivity test or anything about this case, Brandy?
No, like I said, when we talked about food sensitivity testing, it's a guide. It's a starting point. That was a good starting point for us to start with. And with the elimination diet and the food journals, this is where we were teaching her to listen to the symptoms. And so when she would try something, if it didn't feel right, then that was a clue that it wasn't working for her. So it's more than just take out the foods that are on the paper. You also need to kind of tune into your body and get feedback from your body as well.
Absolutely. And some of these were her favorite foods. So that can be an indicator of intestinal permeability. So with the GI map test, addressing those gut infections. And then she also, her husband actually dug deeper with what was going on with his health and found out he had a varicocele. So he had surgery to correct that. And they both were busy professionals working long hours. They really worked on their stress. And then 8 months later, went to IVF and it worked on the first try and they just welcomed their little babies. When working with this couple, we addressed all the issues such as looking at sleep and movement and stress, plus the gut infections, environmental toxins. We haven't talked about that today, but that's a stressor on the body, looking at your personal care, your cleaning chemicals, the plastics, the water, all of those are stressors on the body. So really digging into the whole thing. So as I say, with the Fab Fertile method, it's the functional testing. So we do the food, the stool, the hormone, the hair, the blood chemistry review. We have access to these tests and we ship them worldwide. And then we work on the foundations like our sleep, diet, movement, stress. And like we said, you can't out supplement the basics. And then the stressors. So figuring out the diet that's right for you, addressing the gut infections, looking at those environmental toxins, which I just talked about, the mental emotional stress, the structural stress. So if you've got a pinched nerve or something out of alignment in your body, or maybe you have adhesions in your body from a car accident or any kind of surgery that you may have had, those are clues to dig deeper. And all of this, especially for unexplained infertility and really for any diagnosis, it takes two to have a baby. It has to include your partner. And even though it's women that come to us first, it has to include your partner because it takes two. Yeah, so really the next steps for you, and if you're seriously considering taking a functional approach to your unexplained infertility, you can definitely go to Fab Fertile and click on the link to book a free call. So that's FAB Fertile, and click on the link to book a free call. And obviously this call is for you and your partner. Any last words, Brandy, for unexplained infertility that can kind of be helpful for people?
No, I just want to say hopefully this was educational and helpful and give you some hope, letting you know that there is always something that you can do to improve your health. Always put that hat on and question and say why. Like, why do I have this? What is going on? And start to think about some things. Did something trigger it? Did I have some trauma that happened in my past? Am I having these symptoms that I thought were normal? And maybe that's flu. So hopefully this was able to kind of help you reflect a little bit, take a step back, reflect, and give you a little bit of encouragement that there may be something that you can do about it.
Really, you know your body best, and it's really your body will whisper to you. And you ignore the signals and then it'll start shouting at you in the form of disease. So it is really to listen to those little nudges along the way. What is it trying to tell you? Even though a well-meaning physician may have told you this is what you can, this is what it is, and this is your only path to take, such as IUI or IVF. The functional approach helps you look at your whole body and knowing that there's healing opportunities that you can address. Thanks again for coming on, Brandy, and hopefully this was helpful for people. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. Hey there, I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 2 spots available per month to work with us. So the Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call is for action takers. Really people who are ready to move forward so they can finally have their baby. And if you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. So if you're seriously considering working with us, go to Fab Fertile, FabFertile.com and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. That's Fab Fertile, FabFertile.com and click on Book a Free Call. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you are a U.S. resident, text Fertile, Fertile, to 55444. You'll be prompted to enter your email address and you will receive our fertility yoga download. In this 20-minute intro video, we focus on a calming and peaceful practice to connect back to our heart. These simple yoga poses can help quiet negative thoughts and make you feel more in control. Download it now and get started today. For U.S. residents, text Fertile, Fertile, to 55444. For non-U.S. residents, go to Yoga Freebie, Freebie, to access your special gift. That's yogafreebie.com to access the free fertility yoga download. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified health care provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.